In 2025, there is no political discussion, activity, or action that has affected me personally in any way. I mean, unless you count inflation. However, for some segments, prices have no effect on purchase decisions. This is why the U.S. economy continues to thrive. Hello again. Welcome to The Ruthless Truth. I am your host, Truth Davis. In this forum, I share opinions, thoughts, truths on a wide variety of topics based on what I believe to be a unique life experience. And you can read more about that in the notes, the profile, or the bio. My intent is to share stories and hopefully provide some life and career lessons that will help you in your journey. Please follow me on Instagram at TruthDavis5 and subscribe to the YouTube channel Ruthless Truth. General format, I'll share some initial commentary on current news or just my thoughts. Then I'll go deeper on one topic, which will be today's truth. And then I like to finish with an American history fun fact. Okay, first thing, a few weeks ago, I told you that I had no expectation we would learn anything from the release of the Epstein files. In fact, I doubted they would actually be released. But I said if they were, the documents would be so heavily redacted, nothing really would be revealed. Well, lo and behold, the files were released on December 19th. And there wasn't much there. Many photos had been removed, and also many pages were heavily redacted. In fact, there were over 100 pages that were totally blacked out. I think this will continue to drag on for a while, although it appears more information will be released soon. Okay, on to the housing market. Well, there's good news, and then there's not so good news. Okay, first the good news. In November, existing home sales rose for the third consecutive month. And in the week ending December 12th, mortgage applications rose 13% versus the same period a year ago. So the housing market is trending up, somewhat driven by decreases in mortgage rates. So that's all good. What's not so good? Housing inventory remains low. So while there are more people interested in purchasing homes, they just have limited options. And why? Because the existing homeowners are not listing their homes for sale because it will mean taking on a significantly higher mortgage rate on their next home. Specifically, 54% of current homeowners have a mortgage rate lower than 4%. And with the current national average mortgage rate still above 6%, a new home mortgage would be 50% higher than what they currently pay. As such, people are just sitting it out. And while mortgage rates are falling, no one expects them to approach 4% for at least another year, and probably longer than that. But if you do have to buy now, take comfort that you can get a home cheaper than purchasing in 2024 or 23, but probably not as cheap as 2022. So, good luck out there. Okay, my final comment on current news. Where the hell is the U.S. House of Representatives? Have they just totally checked out? You wouldn't believe it based on the events of 2025, but constitutionally, Congress has equal power to the executive branch, meaning the White House and the president. In fact, a primary role of Congress is to provide check and balance and oversight over the actions of the president. Congress is defined in Article 1, not 2, Article 1 of the Constitution for a reason. Our founders understood that a concentration of power in the office of the president could lead to the type of tyranny they just fought a revolution to end. They believed that a diversity of views in a representative legislature was a more dynamic and balanced way of governing. This is why the Constitution grants Congress specific and immutable powers, ensuring that no president could rule like a monarch. But in 2025, Congress has remained silent and absent, providing the executive branch with unchecked and unprecedented power. This year, the president has imposed tariffs, dispersed billions of dollars, including a $40 billion bailout to Argentina, ordered military strikes in the Caribbean, and most recently is renewing his effort to acquire the Netherlands. All of these actions actually require congressional approval, or at a minimum, congressional review. But that's not happening today. So the president will keep pushing and taking until someone tries to stop him. But what most surprises me is that people are surprised. Let me say this. There is nothing, and I mean nothing, that the president says or does that surprises me. I was shocked by how many conservatives condemned his remarks following the murder of Rob Reiner. But my reaction? Really? Really? These are the remarks that you found objectionable, undignified, beneath the office of the presidency? Why now? I'm sorry. I've seen and heard much worse than this, and no one said a word. So forgive me if I ignore the faux outrage. Do not be surprised when a person who craves and seeks power actually seizes power. I actually do not blame the president. There are many people who will do everything and anything they can if there are no consequences. They're called takers. And every one of you, currently or previously, have had to deal with takers in your life. And you know they will keep taking until you stop giving. And consistent with the political history of the world, what we're witnessing from the White House happens because most people only care or take action when they are directly affected. Otherwise, they let it go or wait for someone else to do something. Now, I can honestly say, in 2025, there is no political discussion, activity, or action that has affected me personally in any way. I mean, unless you count inflation. However, for some segments, prices have no effect on purchase decisions. This is why the U.S. economy continues to thrive. But while I'm not affected, I do care about those who are affected. But unfortunately, not enough of them care about themselves. I'll leave this discussion with the definition of inertia. Inertia is a term related to physics, and it means objects in motion keep moving at a constant speed in a straight line unless an external force acts upon them. So expect 2026 to look a lot like 2025, except worse. And as I've said many times, if Congress doesn't want to do the job, we need different people in Congress. Okay, let's get to today's truth. Today's truth. You know, over the past couple of generations, there has emerged a belief or movement promoting the idea of body positivity. And what is body positivity? Body positivity refers to the assertion that all people deserve a positive body image, regardless of how society and popular culture view ideal shape, size, and appearance. It involves loving your body and feeling good about how it looks. So in today's truth, I just want to say, body positivity is bullshit. Okay? It emerged as a response to fat shaming, which is ridiculing or criticizing people who are overweight or obese. You know, it feels like the overweight are the last group in this country where it's still acceptable to publicly chastise them. Let me also say this. I don't think it is ever acceptable to make fun of any group, whether it's gender, race, national origin, economic conditions, sexual orientation, or any other segment, especially if the target of the ridicule is a factor or condition that is immutable, meaning it cannot be changed. An Asian person will always be Asian. There's nothing that will change that, okay? And encouragingly, the overwhelming majority of the population rejects bigoted comments or personal attacks on people simply based on their appearance or beliefs. But there's still many people who feel it's okay to criticize the overweight and the obese due to deep-seated cultural weight stigma rooted in false belief that fatness equals laziness or a lack of self-control. Okay, let's address that head on because it's patently untrue. Genetics plays a major role in our physical appearance. Some people are naturally thin while others are predisposed to be heavy. Again, I deal in truth and data, not emotion and opinion. This is science. We even have body definitions for the various body types. Let me define the three types. Ectomorph, body type characterized by a lean, thin frame with narrow shoulders and hips and a fast metabolism, making it difficult to gain weight or muscle. Famous examples would include Taylor Swift, Cameron Diaz, Whitney Houston, Tobey Maguire. Okay, the next one is mesomorph. And this is characterized as having a naturally muscular body with a medium frame and an efficient metabolism, able to easily gain or lose weight or muscle. Famous examples here include Chris Hemsworth, Halle Berry, Mark Wahlberg, and Jessica Alba. And then the third one is an endomorph. These body types have a larger, rounder physique, larger body frame, and a slow metabolism, and a tendency to gain fat and weight easily, but lose it slowly. Celebrities included in this group include Oprah, Beyonce, Russell Crowe, Sofia Vergara, and Demi Lovato. Okay, so some people are just naturally thinner than others. Fine, but that's not the end of the story. That's just the beginning. Lifestyle, diet, and exercise still have a greater impact on outward appearance than just your genetic body type. And it means, unfortunately, some people have to work really hard to achieve the physique that others get naturally or easily. I know, it sucks, but that's reality. Okay, so back to body positivity and why it's a joke. There's a huge difference between accepting the body you have and preferring the body you have. Okay? Body positivity falsely suggests that overweight people are happy with their size and they prefer it. And that's where the bullshit comes in. And here's how I know. Every famous overweight celebrity, when given the option, chose to be thinner. Here's just a partial list. Amy Schumer, Lizzo, Meghan Trainor, Demi Lovato, Aisha Curry, Melissa McCarthy, Sharon Osbourne, Kathy Bates, and of course, Oprah Winfrey. And you know what's really messed up? Regardless of the path they chose for achieving the weight loss, many of their fans turned on them. When Lizzo posted pictures of her dramatic weight loss, some critics said she was dishonest or selling out by promoting body positivity while also pursuing weight loss. And then there were others who felt her large size was part of her brand and that she had betrayed the community that supported her. Those are strong words. Of course, there were many others who applauded her for pursuing a healthier size and lifestyle. I often ask people, if you could snap your fingers and be any weight you wanted, what weight would you choose? And I've not met very many people who say they're happy with their current weight. But that's not scientific. That's just, my random questions. But Gallup has been asking this question for years. And it turns out 30% of Americans are actually at their desired weight. But that means 7 out of 10 would like a different weight. And of those, 89% would like to lose weight, while only 11% would like to gain more pounds. Bottom line, no one wants to be fat. No one. So go away with your body positivity. Now, do I believe there are overweight people who have high self-esteem and have positively accepted their current weight? Absolutely. Just because people would prefer to be smaller doesn't mean they are unhappy with their current size. I mean, personally, I'm about 10 pounds away from my goal weight, but I've been 9 to 12 pounds away from my goal weight for about a year. Am I worried about it? Does it consume my thoughts, or is it a source of concern on a daily basis? Not at all. But as I often say, and if you're a frequent listener, you've heard me say it, life is about priorities and choices. So if it was really that important to me, then I'd make more significant changes in my diet to lose the weight. But I haven't. So that's on me. Before I move on to my final point on this subject, I want to make sure I'm very clear. I think it's great that many overweight people have not let their size become a source of internal anguish. I truly believe there are people who have come to accept being overweight or obese and are not stressing over it. But this is not something to be celebrated. Being obese is an undeniable health issue. And if given the option or choice, every obese person would choose to be smaller. Okay, I want to take just a couple of minutes to discuss Black women. Black women have the highest obesity rate among all U.S. demographics, estimated to be 45 to 55%, depending on the study. And then there's another 30% overweight. So nearly 80% of Black women are at least overweight. Now, there are many factors contributing to this, including education, income. Bad, unhealthy food is much cheaper and more readily available than healthier food options. But another major factor is cultural. Not only is female obesity normalized in the Black community, it is often celebrated. I mean, curvy or thick women are admired, or often admired anyway. And studies have often reported that Black women tend to have high levels of body satisfaction and self-esteem, even when overweight or obese, and feel less social pressure to be thin compared to women of other racial or ethnic groups. One ironic note, Black men actually have one of the lowest obesity rates, with only Asian men are leaner. And I totally get the cultural factor. Like a lot of Black men, I too appreciate curvy women, although I must admit I like all body types. But for this topic, I only have two modest requests from my community. First, just acknowledge that obesity is unhealthy, and not only should it not be desired, but we should normalize healthy weight and encourage Black women to achieve it. Notice I said encourage. I am in no way advocating an unhealthy focus on thinness that leads to the eating disorders and mental health issues seen in other demographics. But it should be acceptable to notice or comment if someone close to you is gaining too much weight. It could be as benign as, hey, looks like that weight creeping up on you. You might want to watch it. Second, let's make an effort to eat healthier and exercise regularly. Now, I often hear the comment or criticism that Black women don't go to the gym. Well, that must vary by location, because I live in Atlanta and the gym is always packed with Black women. Still, research consistently shows that Black women have lower levels of physical activity than other racial groups. Now, I realize that sweating can adversely affect some Black hairstyles and that Black hair care can be expensive. But there are still some options that won't leave you dripping in sweat, such as moderate walking or strength training. And hair care is a non-factor when it comes to diet choice. A lot of the bad food choices result simply from a lack of nutritional education. So let's make an effort to get smarter on food and nutrition, and then accordingly make better food choices. So, summarizing body positivity, given the choice, almost no one would choose to be overweight or obese. And when a person makes the choice and commitment to lose weight, let's not criticize them or call them hypocrites because they previously said they were happy with their larger size. And for the Black community, let's not celebrate obesity despite our appreciation of curvy and voluptuous body types. Let's encourage healthier weight goals via balanced diets and consistent physical activity. Okay, let's get to today's American history fun fact. Today's American history fun fact. Today I want to tell the story of one of the most iconic performers in the history of rock and roll and one of my personal all-time favorites, Eddie Van Halen. Now, even if you're not a fan of rock, I'll bet you've heard of Van Halen. In the early mid-'80s, they were one of the hottest groups on the planet, and their single Jump, the band's most successful song, topped the Billboard charts for several weeks in 1984. Or you may know Eddie from his long-term marriage to Valerie Bertinelli. Regardless, while people know of him, few people know his story. So here we go. Edward Lovick Van Halen was born in Amsterdam on January 26, 1955. His father, Jan, was a Dutch musician, jazz pianist, clarinetist, and saxophonist, while his mother was Indonesian. Her family moved to Amsterdam when she was young. Very few of Eddie's fans were even aware of his multiracial ethnicity, not that he ever tried to conceal it. Well, after years of mistreatment due to their mixed-race relationship, the Van Halen family moved to Pasadena in 1962, where they had relatives who lived nearby. Eddie's father worked as a janitor to supplement the income he earned from playing in a band. Now, Eddie and his older brother, Alex, occasionally sat in when Jan's band was short of members. Alex on drums, Eddie on bass. And since Alex and Eddie did not speak English as a first language, they were considered minority students, and they experienced bullying by their white classmates. Fortunately, the Black students at their school often stepped in to protect them from, the racial bullying. And although Eddie started learning and playing piano at age 6, he actually never learned to read music. Instead, he watched recitals of Bach and Mozart repertoire and improvised. Between 1964 and 1967, he won first place in the annual piano competition at Long Beach City College. He won every year. And his parents wanted their boys to continue to pursue classical music. However, the boys gravitated to rock and roll, with Alex playing drums and Eddie picking up and learning electric guitar in his early teens. Eddie and Alex formed the band Mammoth in 1972, and 2 years later, David Lee Roth joined Mammoth as lead singer. Then Mammoth officially changed its name to Van Halen. Gene Simmons of Kiss saw one of their early performances and tried to form a partnership and sign them to his label, but they later signed with Warner Brothers. The 1978 release of their debut album, entitled Van Halen, rose to number 19 on the charts. And by the early 1980s, Van Halen was one of the hottest bands on the planet. And on a personal note, along with Prince and The Time, Van Halen were key members on the soundtrack of my high school years. Okay. In December 1983, the band released the album 1984 with the debut single Jump. And although Jump was the most successful Van Halen song ever, it was also the impetus of the breakup with David Lee Roth. Because musically, Jump is very keyboard centric. And David Lee Roth strongly objected to this. He felt it was a departure from their rock roots, and it felt like a pop song. David just wanted Eddie to play guitar. Well, Eddie prevailed and the song and video achieved iconic status. Still, this was the beginning of the end of David Lee Roth and Eddie Van Halen. Eddie and the group Van Halen continued to achieve chart and financial success even after replacing David Lee Roth with Sammy Hagar. But while Eddie's music career was an overwhelming success, his personal life was nothing of the sort. Eddie Van Halen struggled with alcoholism and drug addiction for most of his life. He first started drinking and smoking at the age of 12 and said he eventually got to the point that he could only function with alcohol. In 1980, he met Valerie Bertinelli at a Van Halen concert, and they got married 8 months later in 1981. They had one son, Wolfgang, who was born in 1991. Now, Wolf is also a musician and performed with his father as the bassist for Van Halen from 2007 to 2020. Eddie and Valerie actually divorced in 2005. In his later years, Eddie Van Halen suffered from various illnesses and maladies, including tongue and throat cancer. He died of a stroke in October 2020 at age 65, surrounded by family, including his son, his then wife, Janny, and his former wife, Valerie Bertinelli. I have to tell you, I was really hurt upon hearing of the passing of Eddie Van Halen. As I said, I grew up listening to Van Halen music, and, you know, it's pretty irreplaceable. So what is his legacy? Eddie Van Halen is widely regarded as one of the greatest guitarists in rock history and was well known for popularizing the tapping guitar technique, allowing rapid arpeggios to be played with two hands on the fretboard. Eddie Van Halen was voted #1 in a Guitar World magazine poll for the 100 greatest guitarists of all time. And Rolling Stone ranked him #4 on its list of the 250 greatest guitarists of all time. And that list came out in 2023. Well, that's all I have for you today on The Ruthless Truth. Thank you so much for listening. Please feel free to comment, send in suggestions. Again, follow me on Instagram at TruthDavis5. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Ruthless Truth. And there's also a Facebook page, Ruthless Truth. Thanks again, and I will talk to you soon.